Good evening, all. I'm Councillor Alan Law, the Chairman of Eastern Area Planning Committee, and welcome to tonight's meeting. The other members of the committee and the substitutes in attendance tonight are Councillors Jeremy Cottam, Tony Linden, Royce Longton, Ross McKinnon, Alan McCrow, Jeff Mays, Graham Pask and Joe Stewart. And the following officers are also in attendance to advise and to support the meeting. Bob Dre, Development Control Team Leader, Sarah Melton, Senior Planning Officer, Deborah Inston, who I believe is not able to attend now, Gareth Downing, Principal Highways Officer, Sharon Armour, Legal, and Stephen Chard, Principal Policy Officer, who will help to run the meeting. And I'm also assisted by Kevin Griffin, who will be the Zoom host for this evening's meeting. So I'll now ask the meeting clerk, Stephen Chard, to give some reminders to members and to other attendees about the way we conduct council meetings by Zoom. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, standard Zoom reminders are being provided to you on screen. In addition to those points, if it becomes necessary for any members to telephone into the meeting, you won't be able to signal to speak. So once everyone who has raised a Zoom hand has spoken, I'll ask the Chairman to invite anyone who has telephoned in to speak in order. Voting on the planning applications will take place via a named vote. Members will be asked in turn by the legal advisor how they wish to vote, by stating they are for or against the proposal, or if they wish to abstain. Please remember to unmute yourself when voting. Any other votes will be conducted via a show of actual hands during the meeting. Unless the committee asks for the vote to be recorded, the outcome of the named vote will not appear in the minutes. So anyone wishing the vote to be recorded must indicate this before the vote is taken. If we need to adjourn the meeting at any point, the Chairman will adjourn and advise the committee of the revised time and date of the meeting. If it is a short adjournment, you'll be able to rejoin this Zoom meeting. Otherwise, a fresh appointment will be sent out. Do members have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted before we proceed? Okay, thank you.
No questions. Could I ask you, Stephen, have we got any apologies tonight? I don't think so.
No apologies for absence, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd then like to move on to item 2, which is the minutes. Members, you've seen the minutes of the previous meeting. Any comments, please? Councillor McCrow, I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment on page 29, the third paragraph down, when we're talking about the car park at Thiel Station. And the minutes say, which is probably what they do say actually, but I think we need to clarify it. So have been granted conditional approval to increase the size of the car park. That conditional approval is for funding from the local economic partnership. It's not planning approval.
Okay. Is there any suggested words to clarify that?
I would suggest have been granted conditional funding approval by the LEP.
Conditional funding approval. So, by the LEP. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments on minutes? If not, can I have a proposer, please, to accept the minutes?
Happy to propose, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Paskett. The seconder?
Second.
Councillor McCrow. Just by a show of hands, please, can we all vote to accept the minutes? I think that's then passed. Okay. Thank you very much. I will sign that. I will sign my signed copy. I actually don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I will do it as soon as this meeting's finished and drop it off in Market Street the next time I have cause to be there. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Before we go on and to ask for declarations of interest, I'd just like to say that although I'm not declaring any interest, I have asked Councillor Alan McCrow, our Vice Chairman, to be the chair for the next agenda item 4, which is Timperley and Pinebourne Road, Upper Basildon. This is not a declaration of interest I'm making, and I am not in any way predetermined, but I do have a different interpretation on some aspects of the officer's report, which I wish to comment on, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to do that from the chair. So just before we go to that item, are there any other declarations of interest from anyone?
Well, Chairman, I guess the Conservative group may wish to declare one en bloc for the Englefield Trust, in that we know Richard Benyon, who is a major player within the trust,
Yes.
for that application.
Well, I think that applies to both parties. Councillor McCrow, do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, but I do have a my own declaration to do as well. In that my children did go to Englefield Primary School many years ago, and also one of the supporters is an acquaintance of mine.
Okay,
But
that's
it's
fine.
Purely a personal.
Fine. Thank you. Councillor McKinnon?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, in the interest of transparency, I'm the ward member for the Englefield item, and I've called it in on the strength of public support. I've not predetermined the item, and look forward to hearing it with an open mind.
Okay, fine. Okay, I think that covers any interests. So I'd like to move on then to the first application this evening, which is Timperley. And Alan, I'd hand over to the chair over to you for this application.
Thank you, Alan. First of all, could I ask our officer, Sarah Melton, I apologise, to introduce the report, please.
I'll just share my screen. Can I just check that everyone can see my screen clearly?
Yes.
I like the photo.
Thank you.
Seal High Street.
The application before members this evening is recommended for conditional approval. The application seeks planning permission for a new dwelling and the relocation of the existing access drive. The application site is located within the settlement boundary of Upper Basildon, where the principle of residential development accords with policies ADP 1, CS1 and C1, subject to the compliance of other planning policies. The site is also located within the North Wessex Downs AONB, which is a highly sensitive location. In accordance with the NPPF, great weight should be given to conserving and enhancing areas such as AONBs. A number of concerns have been raised by third parties in relation to the proposal scheme. These concerns cover a number of issues. These have been considered by the case officer. One concern raised relates to the accuracy of the information submitted. This has been checked by the case officer, who is satisfied that the details submitted are correct. Queries have been raised regarding the use of the adjacent paddock. This does not form part of the considerations for this application. Should additional buildings be required for this land, planning permission would be required. This is clarified by the inspector at paragraph 13 of the 2016 appeal. The highway safety issues and access have been approved by the planning inspector as part of the 2018 appeal. Both inspectors found that a development in this location would not result in an unacceptable impact for neighbouring dwellings. The tree officer has raised no objections to the proposal scheme in terms of the TPO trees. There are two outbuildings within the red line of the proposal scheme, one within the blue line. All of these structures are proposed to be demolished as part of this application. The site is located to the rear of the dwelling known as Timberley, which is located along Pangbourne Road. The design of the dwellings along Pangbourne Road vary in appearance. There are instances of tandem development along Pangbourne Road, such as Knapswood Close to the east and a dwelling to the west. Tandem development on this site is not considered out of character with the surrounding area. The proposal scheme is for a relatively modest dwelling in terms of scale, mass and bulk. The design and form of the proposal scheme includes the sloping roof, which reduces the overall visual impact of the dwelling in terms of mass and bulk compared to the previous appeal schemes. The proposal scheme does include a relatively large level of glazing to the rear. However, this will not be visible from any open views or public rights of way. The materials proposed include timber cladding and roof tiles. The distances between the proposed dwelling and neighbouring properties are provided at paragraph 6.32 of the committee report. These distances are assessed as acceptable and comply with the council's guidance of 21 metres for back-to-back development. The proposed three-bedroom dwelling includes a dormer window and 6 roof lights. A condition has been proposed removing permitted development rights for extensions and outbuildings for the proposed dwelling. As part of the application, process and response to comments by the council's tree officer, the location of the proposed dwelling within the site was amended in order to protect TPO trees. These amendments were fully reconsulted on, including a new site notice and consultee responses. The tree officer has raised no objections to the amended scheme subject to planning conditions. Third parties have queried whether the development site is within the settlement boundary. The site is completely within the settlement boundary of Upper Basildon. This plan shows the locations of the TPOs around the site. There's one to the front along Panbourne Road, and then 3 in Pinnyfarthings Garden, which are to be considered as part of this scheme. This shows the block plan of the appeal scheme that was dismissed in 2018. The design of the latest appeal scheme was one of a modern design. The proposal includes a flat roof and a substantial bulk. The design of the previous scheme was one of a larger mass and bulk than that of the current application. The 2016 appeal scheme was for a much larger dwelling, the curtilage of which proposed to extend into the open countryside, which can be seen to the south of the site. The design of the 2016 would have appeared cramped within the plot and as an overdevelopment of the site. The design of the current proposal scheme is assessed as an improvement to those which have previously been dismissed at appeal. This photo shows the front of the site, which is the dwelling Timberley. This is the existing access from Pangbourne Road into the site. This is one of the TPO trees within the site. This is to the front of the site. This is the access road that runs between Timberley and the neighbouring dwelling. The rear of Timberley and the access road to the side. The rear curtilage of Timberley. These are the existing outbuildings which are to be demolished as part of the proposal scheme. This photograph shows the neighbouring dwellings to the west, and this photograph is of the neighbouring dwelling to the east. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Sarah. Could I ask Stephen Chard to read out written representation from the Parish Council, please?
I'll also share my screen. Is that large enough font size before I begin?
That's good.
Seems fine to me. Yeah.
Okay. Submission from Basildon Parish Council. The council has objected to the building of a house at the rear of Timberley on each occasion the application has been made. The location of the proposal, the garden site, is the central reason for these objections. Pangbourne Road does have some housing behind the main pattern of housing, parallel with the road, but these buildings have minimal impact upon immediate neighbours, unlike this proposal, which will overlook a number of houses in the vicinity and will change the character of this part of the village. There are many grounds for objection to this proposal, outlined by a very wide range of residents in their individual submissions. The Parish Council is particularly concerned about the following. Number one, there will be an increase in cars using the relatively small access point onto Pangbourne Road. The rear of the proposed construction consists of a series of paddocks and wood. The proposed construction will intrude upon the natural landscape. Number three, there is a continuing concern that the site will cross the settlement boundary. 4, building in the back garden of properties has been opposed consistently by the Parish Council and by residents. One of the remarkable features of this application is how little space is available for building and parking, and how cramped the site would be if the application were granted. 5, access to the proposed building between Southcroft and Timberley is very narrow. Should the application be passed, it might well establish a pattern for more infill applications in this area, as well as the possibility of further encroachment into the settlement boundary. At least 4 neighbouring properties will be immediately affected, both in terms of loss of privacy and in the direct impact upon the rear of these properties. Number 7, the proposal is out of character with the general pattern of building and plots in the immediate area. And number 8, the application is not significantly different from the previous applications, all of which have been refused by the Planning Committee. And that concludes the submission for the Parish Council.
Thank you, Stephen. I believe that Mr. Ian Parsons from the Parish Council is present to answer questions. Is that the case?
Would you like me to admit him, Chairman?
Yes, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Parsons. Welcome, and I believe you're willing to answer any questions put to you by members.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So members, do you have any questions for Mr. Parsons from the Parish Council, please?
Councillor Pask has his hand raised, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Pask.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Parsons, you comment in what has just been read out about the settlement boundary as well, and you consider that there is potentially further encroachment into the settlement boundary. We've been assured by our planning officer in her presentation that it's wholly within the settlement boundary. What do you base your judgment?
I think there is a concern that the plot, which is relatively small at the moment, the proposal butts up against the settlement boundary, but the land is all owned by the person who owns Timberley also owns the land at the back of the site, and our fear is that through almost informal or accidental extension, that the back of that plot will overcome the settlement boundary itself. Certainly the plans that have been produced do not suggest that is happening, but our concern is that given the ownership of the site, that may well happen.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question for Mr. Parsons, please? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Parsons. So I'll now ask Stephen Chard to read out the representations from objectors, please. Are you muted, Stephen?
Yes, I was muted.
Right.
I apologise for that. I was just trying to unmute myself. Yes, I should now proceed. Yes, this is a summary of the written submissions from the objectors. Graham Starkins, William Howard and Camille Howard. There is disagreement with the findings of the committee report. The dwelling in Elangani is not comparable to the proposal scheme, as it is in a significantly larger plot of a private access, and the development of Knaps Wood is not comparable, as it is a substantially larger plot with its own access to the cul-de-sac. The proposal scheme is for a substantial dwelling squeezed to the rear of the host dwelling with no private access. The location plan shows how unusual, cramped, and at odds with the neighbouring properties the proposed development would be. By allowing this application, the council will set a precedent for dwellings to be built in any private rear garden along the Panbourne Road. Is this a precedent the council wishes to set? Two previous applications have been refused and dismissed at appeal. As stated by the inspector in the 2017 appeal, development at this location would have an unacceptable urbanisation effect, and this would have an adverse effect on landscape character and scenic beauty of the AONB. This has not been mitigated by this latest application. Paragraph 6.16 of the committee report states that the proposed application will have a reduced impact on the local environment because the proposed design has a lower mass than the previous application. However, paragraph 1.8 shows the proposed dimensions of the design have increased rather than decreased. The previous application had a maximum height of 6.8 metres and a footprint of 83.8 square metres. This application has both a greater maximum height of 7.3 metres and a larger footprint of 99.5 square metres. This means the adverse impact on the landscape character and scenic beauty of the AONB is greater than the previous application. Many of the photographs submitted are inaccurately labelled. They have been taken from the adjoining open countryside, land that lies outside of the settlement boundary and does not form part of the planning application. This makes the site appear much larger than it is. For example, the photographs labelled existing structure on site can contain a structure that lies outside of the planning application site, and the photograph labelled within the site looking west is taken from a position approximately 10 metres outside the site and the village settlement boundary. Approving this application will result in the overdevelopment of a cramped site with no private access, which would ruin the landscape, character and scenic beauty of the AONB. Building a 4-bedroom house in the back garden of Timberley's modest plot is totally opposed to the rural nature of the surrounding area. To repeat the appeal inspector's words, development at this location would have an unacceptable urbanisation effect. The slight amendments to this latest scheme have not changed this. There were and are concerns raised regarding the grubbing up of a mature orchard, providing various wildlife habitats just before the very first planning application was submitted, where in that application, the space the orchard had occupied until a week or so before was what I consider disingenuously described as a garden. Attention should be paid to the Basildon Village Design Statement. And that concludes the submission.
Thank you, Stephen. I don't believe that any of the objectors are present to answer questions. So in that case, I'd like to call on the local member to make his statement. And I'm sure, as you're aware, Councillor Law, you have 5 minutes.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Chairman. As members, this site has, as you read from the reports, a recent history of applications, and 2 previous attempts to obtain approval for a house in the back garden were both refused, and both those refusals were upheld at appeal. So this is one of those applications where I really do feel a site visit would have enhanced our ability to make a decision here. The pictures don't really do it justice. I think we've got to see the context. There's been comments made that it's a relatively small site, and I think you needed to see all of that. But we are where we are. But it's particularly important, I think, that we should have had if we had had a site visit, because as the inspector, as I will mention later on, as one of both inspectors have commented previously, that setting and character as regards to the AONB or to the local landscape is very important to this determination tonight. Now, members, I accept much of what the officer says in her report. And indeed, she points out that the previous designs were refused. The previous applications were refused mainly because the design of the 2 applications was criticized. But she now concludes that the current proposal for just a 1.5-story building addresses this concern. I say perhaps it does, perhaps it doesn't. I find it difficult to be very definitive on this one. I would note that the height of this proposal is exactly the same as the height of the previous refused. I also note that the footprint is, if anything, slightly larger than that which was refused. Overall, the bulk has come down because we've gone from 2 stories to 1.5. But the real question is this still cramped? And is it still overdevelopment as was referred to in the previous applications? Now, what I don't think the officer has adequately addressed is the inspector's comments on the setting and on the character within the AONB and the local landscape. And I would like to read from the inspector's report. This is the second appeal on page 63. Let me just read it. He says, the residential character found in the area, or in terms of having an acceptable relationship to the adjoining open countryside and landscape. And this is paragraph 8 at the top of the page, if anyone's following it. Importantly, it would also fail to protect the setting of the AONB and therefore its special landscape character and scenic beauty, contrary to paragraph 115 of the MPPF. And on the previous page in paragraph 6, the same inspector makes a comment that the previous proposal, it's more built up and enclosed appearance to the appeal site. And it has a more built up and enclosed appearance to the appeal site and its environments than other surrounding properties. And I think whilst the design has changed, I would really question as to whether it has changed that much to reduce the impact on the AONB and on the local setting. And finally, I have one other comment. What's really not addressed, one of the objectors addressed it, which was the access to the paddock at the back. Now, I know there's no planning application for the paddock, but on the planning on the drawings, page 114 in particular, you'll see there's a gate at the back which says access to the paddock. However, this access, I want to question, who owns that access? Because it's currently owned by the owners of Timperley. Access is on the property of this application, so it would be the new owners. So who actually owns that access? And as far as I'm concerned, you've looked at the plans, it looks as if there's no pathway, there's no drive, it's over grass, it's over a back garden. So it's just one of those things. If you want to access the horses that regularly are in that paddock, and the stable block has been taken down now, or will be taken down to make way for this house, you've got a real question is how you access that with this application. Members, I look forward to hearing your views on those comments.
Thank you, Alan. Does anybody have any questions, please, for local councillor Alan Law? It appears you've got off lightly.
Okay.
Not quite,
Oh,
not quite.
Not
Councillor
quite.
Platt.
I did raise my blue hand, Chairman. If you'd rather I gesticulate, I will in the future.
Well, I'm relying on the officers to let me know.
Oh, you can't see my blue hand. Oh, okay, right. Well, at least now I know how to do it. Thank you. Councillor Law, perhaps this may be a question to the planning officer. If so, I put her on notice. She's on next. But you commented, and indeed the objectors commented, if I can quote from their very small writing that I have, about the size. We had a comparison with the first application that was refused on appeal. We have not had a comparison, figuratively that is, with the second one. And someone's got figures of maximum height is now 7.3 instead of 6.8. And footprint's gone up to 99.5 from 83.8. Councillor Law, what do you base these figures on? And I will be seeking further clarification from our planning officer in due course.
Very good question, Councillor. I've tried to look at the drawings. The drawings, in fact, don't have heights. They have relative elevations. So it was very difficult to determine that. So I took those comments from the officer's report. So the height is exactly the same, and the footprint is slightly smaller.
Thank you. Do any other members have questions for Councillor Law? Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to questions to officers. So, Councillor Pask.
Chairman, I think the planning officer knows my question. Do you have, Sarah, you showed us plans for the first application. Are you able to show us plans for the second one and comment on the difference in size?
I can show you the plans. They were on my presentation. I can go back to the screen share and go through those if that would be helpful.
It would, I think, please. You showed us the first one.
Sorry, I may have gone too quickly through my presentation. They are in there. One moment, please. So this is the first application that was refused to appeal in 2016. So this was a 5-bedroom dwelling, I believe. So you can see the block plan there. Then these are the proposed elevations for the 2016 appeal. And if I just go back again, this is the block plan for the appeal that was dismissed in 2018. And the proposed elevations, for the 2018 scheme as well.
Thank you.
Chairman, thank you so much for that. Entirely my fault. I did see all those and I just hadn't linked the fact that they were of 2 applications. Down to me, but thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. Any other members have questions for Sarah or for Bob?
No other hands are raised.
Okay then, thank you very much. We'll then therefore move into debate would someone like to start the debate, please? Councillor Pask.
Chairman, thank you. When we have a planning application that is subject to 2 appeals, I look at all of them very carefully. I look at them especially carefully and read every word of the planning inspector's decisions. I'm just trying to unmute myself. I want to waggle a bit of paper in front of you all. You've got this on page 65. That is the location plan. So what I'm going to suggest and ask you to consider is, I consider that around about here, there are 2 areas. That is one, which is deeper down to here than area 2 in my terminology, which is this bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that and held that up, comparisons have been made that there is back garden development in my area 1, the deeper bit with the houses off that, whatever it's called, something close, Knapswood Close. I contend that the other area in which this site lies, it has its own unique character. All right, you've got Ellangarney at the end, but that's in a huge site, Chairman, and stands alone at the end. You quoted a paragraph or 2 from the planning inspector's decision. That's the one in 18. And I'm going to quote something in his conclusion on page 64, Chairman. Paragraph 16. I'm doing slowly so people can turn the page. Halfway down paragraph 16. Moreover, despite finding that the proposal on balance would be unlikely to lead to conditions that would constitute a highway danger, so I'm not arguing highway grounds, the adverse effect on landscape character and scenic beauty of the AOMB carries with it great weight. This would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the limited benefits that he had identified. Chairman, it's easy to take anything out of context like this, but I firmly believe, and it is a shame, I echo your words, we should, in my opinion, if I'm allowed to go to Waitrose or Lidl or what other supermarkets are available and do my shopping, I'm sure these days we could conduct safe site visits. But I have visited the back of this site, as other members of the committee have, further up the road, I guess to the east, with another application. So I can recall vividly the lie of the land, if I could put it like that, not specifically, I confess, relating to this application. Chairman, in conclusion, I am not happy with this. I am very unlikely to support this. Going back, just looking at the block plan, it is squeezed in. It's slightly better than the one that was refused in 18, but it is squeezed in. Although we might meet the minimum distances between dwellings, 21 metres, I have to say that in a location such as this, a rural location in the AOMB, although technically it might be adequate, I feel that this will look, it's what I call a contrived application, Chairman. As you can tell, I'm leaning rather against the planning officer's recommendation, but I'm not going to make a recommendation to you quite at this stage.
Thank you. I believe that Councillor Cotton wishes to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, looking at it, not unfortunately having the intimate knowledge that obviously the 2 members previously have, map that we have here. Now we have to keep in mind that the AONB is a landscape overview. And the landscape that you have at the moment is the back of all these houses. And you look at the Knapswood Close, and it's just brought those houses closer. In fact, they're closer to the landscape issue than what we're considering today. So I think really that the Knapswood sets a precedent in my mind that this has been found suitable, I don't really think you can use an A or an B reason for refusing this. And the reducing the bulk of the premises, I know the actual heights and that are and widths haven't changed, but the bulk of the building has done so. And putting one or two more cars onto that road compared to the maybe dozen of Knapswood, I don't think would make a big difference. So I just feel on balance, maybe the applicant has just for me done enough to overcome the objections.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Stewart wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I wanted to talk about the fact that the properties to the left and to the right of Timberley, and in fact Timberley itself at the moment, the parking areas are at the front of the house. And this changes that. It not only directs traffic to need to travel past Timberley and to the adjoining, to the property to the left, but it also means that then there is effectively traffic, but cars travelling to the point of the property, which is next to the gardens of the properties that neighbour it. And I can't help but think that the people that are the residents of those properties that currently, I would imagine, enjoy an amazing view apart from anything else, but peaceful areas that they can relax, will suddenly take on a very different meaning if cars are travelling down and parking near there. Even if you immediately switch off your engine, it is still additional noise that was not there before. So I'd also like to say that I agree entirely with the points that Councillor Pask has made. I considered whether there's been talk about, whether this was a precedent. I don't actually think it is a precedent, because if you look, if we can trust the block plan that we have, none of the other properties to the left and to the right seem to have the layout that would allow access to a property in the rear garden. So I don't think that's a concern, but I do think that this is it's a tiny piece of land, and I think it's overdevelopment.
Thank you. Councillor Law.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Let me straight away address the point that Councillor Cotton made when he said that in his opinion, on balance, he didn't think that a property developed in the back garden here would have an effect on the AONB. Well, two inspectors disagree with you, because two inspectors previously have made the point that the property there on that particular location was impacting local landscape in the AONB. I think the officer, to be fair, is saying this one's slightly smaller, and therefore it would reduce the impact. But I think you've also found out it's not really slightly smaller; it's almost identical in footprint and in height. I'll also address the point that Councillor Pask made, and I meant to say this in my presentation because we've referred to Knapswood Close. Now, Knapswood Close, I think, has been referred to somewhere as a similar back garden development. It wasn't. That was a huge field that was actually built out, and it was turned into, as you see, it's a cul-de-sac, and there's two rows of houses. So the second row of houses were not in the front row of houses back garden. They were all built at the same time. There's only one other comment I'd like to make. If this was approved, this would be the only house along that road that has two accesses, or one access to two properties. So it would be very different. I'm not quite sure that's a planning reason for refusal, but it's a feature that's out of sync with the rest of the street scene, shall I put it? And that's all I would say. I'm still listening. I'm tending to go along with Councillor Pask and Councillor Stewart. I'm not happy with this. I haven't heard anything so far which makes me a little bit happier.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Longton. You're still muted.
Yeah, there we
Ross.
go. I'd just like to address one just slight wording error in the report, but I think it's important because it's in one of the conditions I think would need to be changed if we approve the application. I'm looking at page 45, condition 8, electric vehicle charging points, and it's at the moment, the dwelling hereby permitted shall be first occupied until an electric vehicle charging point has been provided. I think it shall not be first occupied until.
I
That's
think
in
you're
one
right.
of the conditions, so need to get it right.
Chairman, thank you. I'd agree with that. Consider that recommendation changed.
Councillor Pask.
Chairman, may I test the water and make a proposal? I propose refusal on the grounds that, and I'm quoting from the last inspector's decision, this application will have an adverse effect on the landscape character and scenic beauty of this part of the AONB. I also think that it is overdevelopment of the site in direct comparison with neighbouring properties. So it is out of character and out of keeping with the immediate neighbouring properties for that reason. And that is my suggestion and my proposal, Chairman.
Thank you. Does that proposal find a seconder?
Happy to second.
Councillor Stewart, sorry. Okay, so we have a proposal to refuse this application. And so I will ask the officers, please, to go through for a call for a vote, name by name, please.
Can I just check that Bob and Sarah are happy with the reasons for refusal?
Sorry, I didn't need to do that. Sorry.
Chairman, thank you. I think we're clear. I've noted down that that in the debate you've had regard to obviously the planning history and the comments made, we've obviously noted down from previous inspectors' reports. It sounds like the key issue is the scale, the building size, the plot size in relation to the building size. And there's also been comments about the access and parking arrangements, which I think factors into the overall character and members' views. And essentially it's the impact on the AONB it's setting in terms of the relationship with the open countryside, cramped form of development over development.
Overdevelopment is a key word, I think, Jim.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So could we go ahead with the vote, please?
Okay, so this is to refuse the permission. Councillor Cottam.
Against.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Was that against? Okay. Councillor Law.
For the proposal.
Councillor Linden.
For the proposal.
Councillor Longton.
Against the proposal.
Councillor McKinnon.
For.
Councillor Mays. Sorry, you're muted, Councillor Mays.
I'm for it.
Okay. Councillor Pask.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Macro.
For.
So that is 6 for and 2 against refusal.
Thank you. So the application is refused. I will now hand the chair back to Councillor Law.
Thank you, Councillor Macro. Thank you. It's a 2-hour show tonight, I think. I'd now like to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the car park proposed by Englefield Parish Council. And I'm not sure who's presenting this. Is this Sarah again? Sarah, if you would lead the way with the presentation, please, I'd appreciate it.
Chairman, just share my screen again. 1 moment, please. This application seeks planning permission for the development of a new car park on a site within the open countryside, the North Wessex Downs AONB, the conservation area and adjacent to a listed building. The site is currently in use as an open paddock. It is a greenfield site. The main issues for consideration are whether the proposal scheme will have an acceptable impact on the protected landscape and designated heritage assets, and whether it's justified appropriate limited development. The proposed car park consists of 28 car parking spaces and 6 cycle stands. Planting is proposed around the edge of the site. A number of representations have been received supporting this application, the majority of which are from parents whose children attend Englefield Primary School, which is located further along the street. There have been no highway safety incidences in this area in the past 20 years. This map shows the site's location within the AONB conservation area and the adjacent Grade 2 listed building. A public right-of-way runs along the eastern edge of the paddock. The proposed car park will be visible from the public right-of-way. The site is located within the open countryside where the principle of development conflicts with policy ADPP1. Within the conservation area, the intervening open spaces between buildings make a significant contribution to the area's setting within the attractive rural landscape. The Council's Landscape Character Assessment, which was published in 2019, states that the gaps between dwellings help to retain the rural character of the area. The proposed scheme is an open paddock which is clearly visible from the public viewpoints. The open views are an important feature of the landscape character. The proposed car park will result in the loss of green infrastructure within the district. This directly conflicts with the policy CS18, which aims to protect and retain green infrastructure. Only in exceptional circumstances will the loss of green infrastructure be deemed as acceptable. There are no exceptional circumstances as part of the current proposal scheme. This view shows along the eastern end of the site along the street. Adjacent to the site is an 18th century Grade 2 listed building, 10 the street. This listed building benefits from an open setting provided by the adjacent field. This open setting makes a positive contribution to and assists in revealing the significance of the listed building. The proposed car park would erode the open character of the area and detract from the rural setting of the listed building, resulting in significant harm to the Grade 2 listed building. Apologies. This photo shows the views along the public right-of-way. The proposed car park will be clearly visible from the street and will cause demonstrable visual harm to the AONB conservation area and open countryside and the setting of the Grade 2 listed building. The application is recommended for refusal for 5 reasons listed in the committee report. These reasons relate to the location of the development, harm to the Englefield conservation area, harm to the setting of a listed building, landscape visual impact within the AONB, and the loss of green infrastructure. It is the view of the case officer that there is no justification for the demonstrable harm caused by the proposal scheme. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I believe we have parish council in attendance, supporters in attendance, and of course the ward member in attendance. So Stephen, if you could introduce some of the written submissions, please, first of all from the parish council.
Yeah, certainly, Chairman.
And if I could just ask Kevin to get the parish council representatives into the waiting room. Thank you. Or rather, out of the waiting room.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a submission from Englefield Parish Council. The proposed development is primarily justified and overwhelmingly supported on the grounds of road safety, and that it will remove cars, particularly from a constricted area around the school, and provide for safer walking and cycling in that area. On the basis of road safety alone, any sensible risk assessment must surely lead to the conclusion that some such mitigation is essential to provide a level of risk that is as low as reasonably practical. It is particularly noted that the committee report includes a number of photographs taken when there is no traffic, but none of those supplied with the application that show a very different picture. But there are other considerations too. Englefield remains a real village community that has evolved over time, with a few 18th century buildings added to throughout the 19th century after the old village was removed, and with further development in the 20th and 21st century. Unfortunately, changing social and economic conditions have overtaken the community. Within living memory, the village survived as almost an enclosed community where cars were counted on the fingers of one hand and visitors from outside were rare, for the most part tradesmen, some of whom still use horse-drawn transport. The number of school children numbered no more than 30 and all arrived on foot or by bicycle. That is no longer the case, and owing to the constraints of the original layout, the village suffers greatly for the impact of those changes, suffering that may readily be alleviated. In landscape terms, while the proposal may impact somewhat adversely on the setting, that impact would be minimal and outweighed by the benefits from the car park. No erection of any structure is proposed, just some permeable surface treatment replacing a small area of grass and some screening vegetation, none of which would have any irremovable effect on the land. Against this must be set the visual intrusion, inconvenience, reduction in air quality and risks to personal safety from the present situation. Considered on the basis of a full social cost-benefit analysis, this proposal must surely succeed, and we would urge members to approve the proposal, please. That concludes the Parish Council submission.
Okay. So are there any questions for the representative of the Parish Council? Is that Mr. Smith? I'm just trying to, who's representing the Parish Council, please?
I am, yes, good evening.
Yes, Mr. Smith. Yes,
Yeah.
Members, any question? I think Councillor Cottam, you had your hand up. Councillor Cottam, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Smith, can you tell me if this is actually tied in use directly to the school? The ownership of the land is whom?
All of the land belongs to Englefield Estate.
Okay, and is there any written agreement that this be used solely for the purpose of the school traffic?
There's no agreement as to use whatsoever.
Okay, right, thank you.
Any other questions, members? Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Mr. Smith. The submission mentions the current situation regarding to traffic at particular times. Would you be able to describe the current situation with regards to traffic? If it's different from the photos we've seen, how different could it be?
Well, the photograph, there were photographs included with the application, which show that there are cars parked pretty much the entire length of that part of the street, and around the back there is a road which runs from a point just about opposite where this proposed car park is, around the back of the houses on that side of the street, and comes out back onto the street a bit further up. And cars park all the way around there as well. There are some houses on that piece of road. Cars park all the way around there as well. At either end of that piece of road, the visual display is non-existent, so it's very difficult for them to get back out again onto the road. And the cars are parked all the way further up the road as far as they can be. The area outside the school, immediately outside the school, is kept clear, of course, by the school. But there are literally nose to tail cars everywhere else. As I say, I would urge you to look at the photographs that were in the application. They show the situation very well.
Thank you for that, Mr. Smith. I think that probably your description goes to most schools and most villages throughout West Berkshire. But nevertheless, it is congestion. I agree with you. Councillor Pask, I have you down for a question.
Chairman, indeed, I'm going to show the picture just for clarity. But in the officer's presentation, it's entitled "View from the Street." It's that one, Chairman. I hope it's reasonably clear. Yeah. I want to ask Mr. Smith, please, that it was clearer on the screen, the presentation, but on that it looks like there's a dropped curb. Is this area currently used for how should I put it, some sort of temporary parking on an ad hoc basis at the moment?
Yeah, that is a view on the opposite side of the road to where the site concerned is. And yes, indeed, there is car parking there from time to time. I'm not sure whether there might have been a car visible just in the distance in the photograph parked on there, actually. No, right. There is a nursery school in the old fire station, which is just at the end of that piece of ground, and they do park there sometimes. But it's used, yes, ad hoc parking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just check. I've no other blue hand. Anyone else
Councillor Mays has got his physical hand.
Councillor Mays, Jeff, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Mr. Smith, we had similar problems in Mortimer about several years ago. Can you confirm that the parking itself is going to replace the street parking, which I think was done with Grasscrete at one stage, a little further along that road a few years ago, probably in the 2011-2015 period?
Correct.
So is that the case, that this will replace that parking or make it less likely to be damaging the grass area?
I'm not sure what the Grasscrete area would be. The area we saw in the photograph that was just shown certainly isn't Grasscrete.
That is it?
Well, that bit certainly isn't Grasscrete.
It's not. Okay, thank you.
There may be some further down.
Yeah.
But this would replace all on-street parking, clearly.
Hopefully, yes.
But yes.
If I could come in to help you, Councillor Mays, I well remember that. There was an application for something at the school.
Yeah, it was.
Part of the conditions there was grasscreting down what was a grass verge that was used for parking, and so it's near the school, if my memory serves me right. That's just for clarification. Anyone else? Mr. Dowding, you have your hand up. Do you like to make a point?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just to clarify what you just said about the parking on the area opposite. Yes, it was part of a plan application for the nursery in the old fire station. That they were to provide a reinforced grass verge area in that verge all the way along from the old fire station towards in between the trees. And that was a parking area to be provided for parents of both the nursery and the school to use as an overflow area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Smith? If there's not, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. If we could, Stephen, if you go on with the supporters' submissions, please.
I should just once again share my screen. Yes, this is a multiple submission from supporters. Hilary Latimer, the head teacher of Englefield Primary School, Chris Gittings, the chair of governors of the school. There are significant concerns that the potential barrier to having this application passed is the perceived lack of need. It is questioned whether the council require an accident to happen outside the school before they see a need for safety measures. The school's position in the conservation area limits the safety signage and traffic calming measures that can be put in place. With a growing number of pupils from outside of the rural catchment area, the number of cars coming in and out of the village at either end of the day is growing. Surely housing some of these cars in the off-road parking area would be far preferable to the roads and verges being blocked, both in terms of safety and in terms of preserving the conservation area. The council has already passed the building of a large primary school on a greenfield site and field, which has had a big impact on the look of the local area. The proposed car park in Englefield will be far more discreet and would ease traffic congestion rather than create it, as the new school seems to have done on the Englefield Road. The school is in an extremely fortunate position to have the support of the Englefield estate, who are proposing to provide this car park without any financial burden on the taxpayer. The objections of the conservation officer seem to be based more on technicalities than on experience and knowledge of the actual village environment that we all want to protect. Despite the fact that limited development is permitted, the objection centres on 5 aspects, claiming that the car park will be to the detriment of a green space and a countryside vista, which is part of the special character of the village. There is a long open vista to the left of the street as you travel into the village. More than 60% of this will be retained. The conservation officer may not be aware that there is already parking on the other side of the street, an eyesore causing a muddy mess and disrupting the view of the similar open field on that side of the road. This extends further than the proposed car park, so there will be a net gain of open field vistas in addition to the tidying of the area and the improvement to green infrastructure at the base of a magnificent stand of trees. Although the view of and from number 10, the street will be marginally diminished from one of 4 sides of the building, it will remain in an open setting. The view of numerous other buildings, including the school, church, and Englefield House with its magnificent deer park, will be majorly improved by the absence of a long string of parked cars blocking the road and the views of anyone walking down the street, including the parents, children, and staff of our school coming to and from the school twice a day. That concludes the supporter submission.
Thank you. I see we have Mr. Gittins and Ms. Latimer in the meeting. Members, any questions of these two supporters? Well, I have Councillor Stewart first and then Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. It's a question to their head teacher. Is it Mrs. Latimer? Hello. I just wanted to say I really heard your impassioned plea in your submission, and thank you for that. It's been mentioned by officers that there haven't been any traffic incidents in the last, I think the 20 years was quoted. I guess it's a question of why now? Is there something that has sparked this particular application? In particular, I'm thinking, has there been a sudden increase in numbers, in pupil numbers, or in cars, or have there been some near misses, or it's, you know, something along those lines? What is it that's bringing this to us now?
Okay, I've been at the school since 2011, head teacher since 2018. And in that time, parking has always been an issue. As someone mentioned, it always is around West Berkshire primary schools. However, in more recent years, what we found is we have far fewer children coming from our local catchment area. The population of primary school age children is simply dying out in that area. So the vast majority of our pupils come from outside of the area. So last year in our intake of 18 new pupils, 2 of them are within catchment. We now have over 70 different families in our pupil population of 100 pupils. We have very few siblings at the moment. So we have far more cars coming to Englefield twice a day. The cars have got bigger. With COVID at the moment, they're not car sharing. And actually car sharing is an issue for our parents anyway in normal circumstances, because many of our parents drop their children and go straight to work. So car sharing isn't always an option for them. In addition to our cars, we are now experiencing an increased number of coaches, lorries, delivery vehicles. So the various thriving businesses and community ventures within the local community. So next to the school, we have the 5-a-day garden. There's often coaches coming there, and we have the garden centre opposite with deliveries being made. Often a large lorry's there when I arrive at 7:30 in the morning. That takes up 5-6 car parking spaces straight away. So with regard to accidents, there have been incidents, but nothing that would be reported because nobody was actually injured. But we've had toddlers running out into the street. We have an issue where some of our parents walk their dogs down the path when they bring their children in the morning. They're not allowed onto the school ground, but they go down the narrow path. And some of our young children have gone out into the street to avoid dogs. Because there are cars parked there, that makes it very difficult for people passing to actually see the children. The advantage of a car park would mean that a lot of the cars wouldn't get as far as the narrow part of the street. It's the narrow part that's the really dangerous area. And we have tried various things in the past, like walking buses. Unfortunately, being a small school, we just don't have available staff to do that every day. And it meant people parking up in Partridge Gardens to sort of deliver their children to our walking bus. That created further disturbance. We do try and operate a one-way system. We've tried everything with the local community to try and make this work. We don't stand still on this. We work closely with the garden centre to see when we can use their car park. And it just seems that every year parking continues to be a concern for us, and a safety concern at that.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks, Chairman. Look, not for the first time, Councillor Stewart put it far better than I could. I was going to ask the same thing, so no need to repeat it.
Okay. Any other members wishing to ask a question? I have a question for Ms. Latimer. 2 things, we'll discuss this later, but would you be prepared to have a condition attached to this if we approved it for only parents of school to be able to park in that car park, number 1? Would you be happy to do that? Be prepared to accept that? And 2, would you therefore be prepared, if we also approved it, to have double yellow lines down near the school so that nobody because in my experience, people continue to park as close to the school as possible for drop off. And we'd need double yellow lines to avoid that. Would you be happy to do that?
What we do currently, because we're in the conservation area, we've never had the lines outside of school, and it's always been a desire of the local community that we don't have them.
I understand, but you're going to have a car park now if it was approved. Would you be happy to have that as a condition?
Yes, I mean, I don't know that that's my place to say I'd like that as a condition, but...
Well, I'm asking your opinion because that's what you're here for tonight.
Okay, then yes.
Okay, fine, thank you. And you'd be happy for a condition that the car park was only for the use of parents?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? No. Okay. Stephen, I guess it's the ward member now, isn't it?
No, the agent.
Yes, there was an agent. Yes, the agent, please. Could you just read out the submission of the agent? Thank you.
Yes, this is a submission. So good evening. This statement is on behalf of the applicant, the Englefield Estate. The estate's planning consultant, Mr. Brown of Savills, is available to answer any questions that the committee may have in relation to the application proposals. Englefield Village is at the heart of the Englefield Estate. Together with the community, the estate is committed to ensuring that the village, under its long-term stewardship, maintains its social, economic and environmental vitality by supporting local people, services and facilities. In this context, the proposal for a car park is one of a number of small-scale projects which are key to supporting the long-term vitality of the village. These were discussed with the community at a consultation event in 2019, and the suggestion for a car park was overwhelmingly supported. As a result, this application has the support of the local primary school, parish council and local residents. Some 45 letters of support have been noted in the officer's report tonight. We accept that the location of the car park is sensitive, being in the countryside, an area of outstanding natural beauty and a conservation area. Through sensitive use of materials and landscaping, we have sought to minimise the impacts. And indeed, the officer's report acknowledges that the harm to these assets is not substantial. Any harm is, in our view, clearly outweighed by the benefits to the car park, which include the improvement in highway safety for school children that have consistently been supported by the primary school, the provision of a safe off-road footpath for children, which will be provided from the car park to the school, the removal of a proliferation of parked cars around the village, including that which blocks the entrance to the garden centre opposite the school, and which damages the grass verges and tree roots further along the street and which attract from the conservation area. This is a case of applying the planning balance, weighing the significant public benefits of the scheme against the less than substantial harm. We recognise your officers have recommended that their application be refused, but this is a matter of planning judgment, and so it is open to you to come to a different view. We are aware of other cases in the district where car parks for schools, including within the AONB, have been granted. For example, close by at Pangbourne School, Bradford College and at Ufton Nervin. In all these cases, the harm to the landscape and heritage aspects was judged to be outweighed by the benefits to the schools. This car park is therefore not a new precedent, and we respectfully request that members move to approve the application. That concludes that submission.
Thank you, Stephen. We have Mr. Brown. I see, yes, Phil Brown. Members, any questions of Mr. Brown? Councillor McKinnon, you were just in before Councillor Pask.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
Then got Councillor Mays and Councillor Micro.
Yeah, thanks. Mr. Brown, could you just briefly explain what the proposed material and look of the car park is going to be?
Yes, I certainly can. It is. It's a bituminous resin, but in a buff colour. That's going to be filled with gravel, and it's in fact the same material that is used at the Cobbs farm shop not far away. And as you know and seen from the drawings, it will be enclosed by a hedge. And I might say, you know, the estate could, if they wanted, in this location, plant a hedge, and that wouldn't require any planning permission.
Okay, Councillor Pask.
Thank you, Chairman. We heard from the head teacher that she would be happy for this to be for the sole use of parents of the school. Why isn't that in the proposal?
Thank you, Councillor. it is actually something that we have offered to officers, and there is a section of the committee report before you where they've considered that. We've proposed a condition as suggested to the head to limit use to the school. We are, or the estate is, I should say, comfortable with that. We think it's a reasonable condition. Your officers have a different view, but you are able to make your own judgment on that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. I think Councillor Mays, you were next.
Yes, Mr. Brown, I've got a number of questions for you. On the drawings, I see that there are gates. Is it intended that the gates will be open 24 hours a day? And will there be lighting within the car park area?
Thank you, Councillor. If it's to be limited in its use to the school, then the gates would be closed. The advantage is that there are several members of the Englefield staff who live in the village, so that could be quite effectively managed if necessary. I believe that there is some low-level lighting just simply for safety purposes within the car park, but it's certainly not street lighting. That would be incompatible with the rest of the village. And on that point, I might just add, whilst a personal condition we feel would be appropriate, actually, double yellow lines might jar a bit in the conservation area, and bearing in mind the character of the street, which is very rural in its own right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Councillor McCrow.
Thank you. Most of my questions have been asked actually, but the one remaining one is about the path that's on the drawing, which we're told is not part of the application. So I was wondering why that was. So I think a good link to the school is essential for this car park.
Thank you, Councillor. If the car park is there, then the parking on the street is removed, and the conflict between cars and people going to and from the school is reduced or removed. So in theory, actually, it would be safer to walk along the street. But as an alternative, the estate has considered a route around the rear of number 10 to the school, and it would also help to get to the village hall as well. So that is land that's under the control of Englefield Estate and can therefore be delivered if necessary.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? Oh, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, just while I was looking at the plan and listening to the conversations, it's not clear to me from the plan. So perhaps if you were able to describe it to me, Mr. Brown, but is there anything to stop parents or people still parking in the place? And I think it goes back to Councillor Pask showing us the photo. It may be that I'm not looking at the right photo, but we're building a car park into this area of land. Does that include the piece where the parents are currently parking? So it effectively takes it out of that they won't be able to, because I know that people, if you get too many people in a car park, then if there's still options to avoid it, and I think somebody may have mentioned this already, does this design prevent that from happening?
It is a different area of land, Councillor. Right. The land that was referred to is on the opposite side of the street, and it's actually under some rather fine pine trees. And that parking definitely impacts on those trees. But what I can say is, and if you visit the village during school drop-off, the school are very proactive in managing their parents. And as we put in our planning statement, there would be measures such as them looking at their travel plan and communicating with parents about how to drop off their children, where to park. And, you know, it is relatively easy to identify those people who are being lazy and to have a quiet word with them. So it would be difficult potentially to enforce. I have to accept that. But I think with good control via the head, who clearly has a good handle on her school, I think it should be achievable. If I could perhaps just use this as an opportunity to say that, you know, we do agree that this is a sensitive location, but where we disagree with officers is the degree of sensitivity. I think.
Can I just interrupt you, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
You should just be answering the question that was asked, please.
That's my best.
Your opportunity to make your points were in the written submission. No other questions? Okay, I'd like to then bring Councillor McKinnon as the ward member in, please.
Thanks, Chairman. And yeah, I won't keep you long because I do want to take part in the debate. I'm not speaking in favour or against the application. No point in repeating the supporters' submissions. We've heard from them. And in terms of objectors, I think the planning officer's report fulfills that purpose quite well. So yeah, look forward to taking part in the debate. That's all, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So, members, we move on. Any questions of officers? Any questions of clarification of Sarah and Bob? Councillor McCrow. You're muted, Alan. Alan, you're muted.
Yes, I've covered up the microphone icon. In the report, the officers say that there will be an 18-metre gap between the car park and what they describe as a footpath or footpath. Am I right in thinking that's the actual footway along the side of the street?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of officers? Okay, I have two. The first one is that I note in the report the officers weren't keen on parents from the school only parking because they said it's very difficult to enforce. And I can accept that, although I did hear there are gates that could be closed at non-school times. Is there anything, apart from that comment, is there any reason why we could not put a condition of parents only? That's my first question. I guess that's to you, Gareth. My second question is, we can have double yellow lines in a conservation area. I know I've got some outside my door. Is there any reason why we cannot put double yellow lines down by the side of the school where people currently park and drop off? Those are my two questions.
Yep. Maybe Gareth can help me out, but I'll start on the first question. As it's
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
Just looking at the conditions, I don't believe we would pass the tests of the MPPF in that it's reasonable to do so. If you've got a car park in this location, the damage is kind of done, and it wouldn't be reasonable to prevent other people from using it during the day. The car park.
Who would appeal that if it was approved?
Who would? Sorry, Councillor.
If it was approved, who would appeal that condition?
Who would appeal?
Chairman, the tests are the tests in that respect.
That's fine.
I think our point is if you accept that the harm that we're suggesting there is justified based on the benefits of the proposal, then given where it is, we would question, is it really necessary to then restrict it? Does it matter if someone else uses it at a certain time when it's not full? So if you accept that harm, what's the additional harm of allowing that use?
Yeah. Could I also point out, Mr. Chairman, that if it has to be controlled for school access only, what happens when a parent turns up before the school's opened the gate? That parent is going to park on the road until the gate is open and may or may not then move on into the gate.
That sounds to me like a matter of timing, Councillor, not Councillor Gareth, but I'm just asking the question. So who's going to deal with the double yellow line?
I'll deal with the double yellow lines, Mr. Chairman. The biggest objection that we would have, biggest problem we would have to double yellow lines is whether or not residents actually objected to the consultation of those double yellow lines being provided. We can certainly provide the conservation double yellow lines. They are, considerably smaller and a slightly different colour to normal double yellows. But it's the fact that we have to do the full consultation with all the residents in that area. And if we were to receive objections from residents who wish to still park out on the street in that area, we would have to respect those objections and consider whether or not it's appropriate or not to put those double yellows in.
Understood. That'd be an interesting one if this was approved, for all the supporters, subject to, and if it did get turned down after consultation, then the whole car park would not be allowed. I've got a couple of hands going. I've got Councillor Pask and I've got Bob. Councillor Pask, you go first, please.
Chairman, thank you. I'm going to be slightly cheeky and say to you, why double yellow lines? You can have parking restrictions with a single yellow line, which is amplified by a plate which says the time in which the waiting is limited. So to Mr. Dowding, I would suggest that you could have a single yellow line with no parking between the hours of, shall we say, 8 and 10 and 2:30 till 4:30, which would overcome the issue of the residents, and it would also overcome it would also prevent the parents, assuming, of course, it could be policed and enforced.
Sure. Interesting point. Correct, Gareth?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, absolutely. We can have time plates as to when parking would be restricted. Yes.
But you'd still have, even a single yellow line with time restrictions would have to be consulted. Is that what
still has to be full consultation
Thank
with
you. Okay. I'm just trying to frame the future debate. Bob, you look as if you want to say.
Yeah, Chairman, just concluding on those points, essentially, because double yellow lines, single yellow lines are subject to a process which there's no certainty of it being a success. That gives concern about putting on a condition as part of the planning permission to apply double yellow lines, because it would be unreasonable if, out of the applicant's control, they cannot get it. If there's an objection which we can't account for, then that would stymie it. So yeah, I would have to advise, unfortunately, even if it wasn't a potential option, it's something that I can't recommend.
Okay, so that may just make it more difficult for members to possibly accept this application. Okay, thank you for that. Can I go on to no other questions of the officers? Can I move to debates? Who wants to start the debate? Councillor McKinnon.
Thanks, Chairman. I've been listening with interest to everyone's submissions so far. Reading the officer's report, so Sarah's report, I get the objections. I really do. The loss of green infrastructure, the Grade 2 listed building, and the landscape visual impact. And the policies say that that's the case. There's just a little nagging doubt in my mind that says, though, well, loss of green infrastructure, it's the corner of a paddock. It's not going to be concrete. We're not paving paradise to put up a parking lot. It's going to be countryside style materials. There's a similar car park to this over at Cobbs at Englefield, just the other side of the road. The current visual impact of the cars, I have been there, I have seen it, I think it would undoubtedly be improved, actually. And I'm not contradicting anything that Sarah's put in her report there by saying that, but I'm maybe just putting it in a wee bit more context. And a thought struck me, is that the policies, strictly applied, certainly benefit those people who visit the AONB, who pass through it and enjoy the views, but they certainly don't benefit the villagers. And it's the villagers here who clearly support this proposal, with no objections at all, with a lot of support. And I just ask members to consider, maybe there's a problem in just applying the policy so rigidly here, when this village, which has seen an increase in pupils taking up places at the school, clearly wants this to happen. So it's just a thought in my mind, who are the policies actually protecting, and is there a balance to be struck somewhere? So yeah, I know it's a difficult one for members, I do, but I wonder if that can be taken into consideration.
Okay, I've got Councillor Macron and then Councillor Pask.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, first of all, I would comment on the fact there's no objections, in that I believe all the properties, it might be all bar one properties in Englefield, are actually owned by the estate, and so they're all rented by the estate. And I think there's a little bit of a reluctance of people to object to something their landlord, and in many cases their employer, wants to do. I know Englefield very well. As I mentioned, my children went to school there. We were members of the social club for many years, And then went up to the last general election, there were several leaflet deliveries in the area. So I do know it very well. One thing that has changed since our day, and I think it's only comparatively recently, at the end of the street, there's a T-junction with a private road that runs from the kind of main entrance to the house, up to the house itself. That used to be open, and what used to happen with parents, if they couldn't find a space, they would, on the way into the village, they would turn around in the T-junction and then find a space on the way back. That's now been gated off. So it's much more difficult now for people to do that. And of course, you've now got the possibility of cars doing 3-point turns near the school, which isn't very attractive. Yeah, so yeah, all in all, I wasn't very keen on this initially, but then I did read the submissions made, and I think it's brought me around. I think it's most important really to look at children's safety, and I think that outweighs the little harm, well, the non-significant harm that this will do. The only concern I do have, though, is that with the 18 metres from the car park to the footway and 175 metres to the school, I suspect a lot of parents will use it and they'll drive past. Just make one more remark about the potential of restricting the use of the car park. I think that would be a mistake, actually, because the car park's near the shop and post office and the tea rooms. So I think it'd be a silly, really, to have a car park only used for kind of half an hour a day, and then have cars having to park on the street when they want to use the post office or whatever. But I've kind of reluctantly come around to support the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pask.
Chairman, thank you. I mean, we don't determine planning applications on the level of support nor the level of objection. And I understand all the points that our planning officer has made in what has obviously been what is obviously a well-written report. I do, however, have a slightly different take on one aspect in particular. As Mr. Brown told us, the estate could plant a hedge along this anyway and obscure the gap between dwellings. In any case, to put it bluntly, I think there is still a gap between dwellings. It may occasionally have cars on it, especially at school drop-off and pick-up time, and occasionally, if we don't restrict it, for the shop and so on. But these cars are parking on the road, potentially in front of this area in any case. So I am leaning towards the fact that, and it's unusual for me to go against a conservation officer, but what is the ultimate harm in this compared with the ultimate benefits? I have to say I concur and thank Bob Dray for his comments about the yellow lines. I don't think we can condition those. If there is an issue, and I am utterly convinced that the school will manage this to the best of their ability, despite the 175 metres or so distance. If they don't, there is a mechanism by which they could, as a last-ditch attempt. But I don't think we should go there now. As far as conditioning it just for the school, pros and cons, at the moment I'm happy to listen to other people's views, but leaning towards being sympathetic towards this application.
I think Councillor Collum, I don't have a blue hand, but I've got a physical hand, I think. Is that correct? Go ahead.
Can do a blue hand if you wish. I completely concur with Councillor McKinnon. I think this judgment imbalance, the benefit for the community, and especially small children who are very unpredictable and sometimes uncontrollable. Because there hasn't been an accident doesn't say there can't be. In terms of the view, you will be just taking the cars from plastering themselves along the road into a condensed area, which actually probably will have a lesser visual impact than you would on the actual streets. So, like Councillor Macro and Councillor Pascal, leaning towards that this is such an important issue that it really does need our support.
Anyone else wish to make a comment? I'm going to make one comment. I've noticed the AONB has not commented. We can all judge how significant that may or may not be. Can someone make me a proposal, please? Well, go ahead, Councillor Pask. I think there's no one speaking against this, so.
Well, there's a bit of a clue, Chairman. I was leaving it for someone else to have a go, but as there was a pause and a reluctance, I'll wade in. But Chairman, I think on balance, I think the benefit to this outweighs the disadvantages. And so I propose, therefore, that we apply a fairly standard set of conditions, the starting time and so on and so forth, landscaping to be agreed. We've got the surface treatment proposed. I think that should be conditioned. The thorny issue, do we restrict it to the school or not? No one's actually spoken strongly one way or the other, so I'm tempted to say not. But I could be flexible on that. So there you have it.
Okay, does that find a seconder? Councillor Cottam has his hand up.
I would very much like to second this motion as clearly put by Councillor Pask.
I'm sorry, say all that again. You cut out in the middle.
Okay, my apologies. Yes, I concur with Councillor Pask and support.
Okay, so no condition about just the schools. Bob, do you want to, or Sarah, do you want to come in? If this gets carried, we need some conditions attached.
Thank you, Chairman. We did have a discussion before of potential conditions. I would ask that, as usual, where you're returning in this way, that you delegate to officers to determine. I can give you a list of what we think would be appropriate. The standard commencement in 3 years, approved plans. We'd request details of materials in terms of a schedule. We would impose a condition that the parking is laid out, the cycle parking is provided, and the access is provided all in accordance with the drawings, i.e. it's completed properly before it's brought into use. Yeah. We would, prior approval for a landscaping scheme, you've have a hedge indicated, but that would cover the planting specifications to ensure it's a robust, properly staggered, etc. A construction method statement to be approved, and working hours given the nearby residential, and in terms of the method statement also because of highway safety. I'll read my writing. Tree protection conditions, approval of a lighting strategy, which we can condition to be appropriate to the AONB based on the Institute of Lighting Engineers.
The dark skies policies of the AONB.
So that was the list we came up with as would be required.
Can I just ask about the gate? Was the gate actually in the drawings? I haven't got them in front of me.
There is a gate shown in the drawings,
okay,
but it doesn't specify the gate, so maybe details of the gate.
No, I was just thinking having a gate because of security reasons and things like that as well. That's fine. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I also suggest drainage and suds? Make sure that any water falling on the car park does not fall out into the street and cause an additional problem.
Okay. If yeah, you can. Councillor Pask and Councillor Cottam, are you happy with all those?
Most of them. I've got most of them, Chairman, apart from the suds. So yes, I'm happy.
You're happy, Councillor Cottam. Okay. Members, we have a properly proposed, properly constituted proposal with conditions to accept this application. It's properly seconded. Can you take us through the vote, please, Stephen?
So this is to approve the permission, delegate to officers the detail of the conditions or anything else that maybe is missed off this list. I think that's what we've agreed. So Councillor Cottam.
4.
Councillor Linden.
4.
Councillor Longton.
4.
Councillor McKinnon.
4.
Councillor Macro.
4.
Councillor Mays.
4.
Councillor Pask.
4.
Councillor Stewart.
4.
Councillor Law.
4.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Now we move on to the final item for the evening, the final application, which is just a listed building application, West Streetley House. Again, Sarah?
Chairman, I'll be doing this one.
Okay, Bob.
Just share my screen, bear with me. Can you all see that full screen?
Yep.
Okay, members, this application is for West Streetley House on the High Street in Streetley, which I'm sure many of you will recall from an earlier virtual committee that we've undertaken. This application is for a listed building consent approval for the addition of a kitchen vent through the roof of the rear extension, which was actually been previously approved in other schemes. We are recommending that listed building consent is granted. The reason it's before you is because of the level of objection. The screen's just been a bit slow. Okay. So the application, this is West Streetley House. You can, I hope members will recall that there are previous approved developments for building in the rear and also the extensions to the rear and side of the house. And then more recently, an approval was granted for the replacement of the utility side extension on the side here. So this application relates to a vent going in down here. This was the original proposal, which attracted the majority of objections. Here you can see this is looking at it from the side, the rear extension, and it was this flue here. It doesn't need planning permission because of development rights, so it's purely listed building consent. Because of the Conservation Officer's concerns with the prominence of that flue, it has been revised to now a tile, basically an inline clay tile slip vent, which will be inserted amongst the roof tiles in coming in here on the floor plan. So that's a bit closer up, so hopefully you can just see the tile we're talking about. And that's just giving you an idea of the extension. So here's the utility that we discussed at a relatively recent committee, and it's down here. As this is listed building consent, there's only one main issue, and that's whether the proposal would preserve the special architectural and historical interest of the listed building and its setting. So some other planning considerations which we would normally deal with are not relevant. You see from the report that the Parish Council have not objected. The Conservation Officer did originally object to the first flue that I showed you, but is satisfied with the revision. To quote, it would not in any way, it would not be in any way obtrusive to harm the appearance of the building, but that we would just need to ensure that the colour finish of the clay tile slips match the approved tiles. Just on the level of objection, I'd say we've had 14 individual contributors from 12 separate properties. The primary objection was to do with the position, height, and the obtrusiveness of the flue. That has been amended to this vent, and obviously that's going to largely overcome that objection, being an inline tile. But there were also concerns raised about odour, noise and disturbance to the neighbouring property, Charlwood House. As it's a listed building consent, that is not actually a consideration we can take into account. So let's say that's not factored into our decision making. So we've recommended that it is approved with the condition as I referred to for materials. So yes, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think we've any parish, any objectors, any supporters. So if I could move straight on to the ward member, which is my good self. I don't have too much to add to this. Members will remember we've had a few applications, a bit of controversial applications around West Streetley House that Bob referred to. It's safe to say that subsequently there's been a few enforcement issues, particularly with the times of delivery and times of work. So it's also safe to say I don't think the group of neighbours and the applicant are on great terms because of that. But that's got nothing to do with this application. It's just a background. Bob has covered the main point. I suspect that most of the objections have actually gone away, as the conservation officer has pointed out, by removing the chimney and doing an end-tile vent. That seems to be the case. And frankly, as Bob has also said, anything, I think one or two people mentioned odor and noise, but that's not a listed building. It doesn't come into the remit of a listed building application. So I think this is quite straightforward. And if there are any questions of the officers, let's have them now, please. Or is there any questions of me? No. So any questions of the officer? Councillor Mays.
Yeah.
Councillor Mays.
Thank you. My question has occurred because of a similar event we had in Mortimer on a property nearby. Is it gas fired Arga, or is another fuel imposed? And is it cooking smells or fuel effluent that is a problem in that area? And is there a window on the flanking wall on the adjacent house or the neighbour? So I need that to be clarified.
Thank you. Bob?
Chairman, I can clarify. As I say, I don't know what type of fuel is used because it's simply not really relevant to the listed building consent consideration, so we wouldn't have need to ask for it. I'm afraid we've just looked at the impact on the character of the listed building, where the insertion is into the building's fabric, and obviously it's a new extension in itself. And in terms of the relationship to the property, the neighbouring property, if members have
are there any windows?
It does. Well, where it actually is, let me share the plan again.
I can't see it on the drawings I've got.
I will just bear with me, members. I'll just share the screen again. Right. Sorry. I haven't put it to full mode, but just so you can see there, it's down here. So there's the neighbouring property up there. It's some distance away. It's like roughly around there, and you see the land. The land goes away as well. It's not within the boundary.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. If I go to debate, if there's going to be a debate, or can someone go straight into a proposal?
Those officers' recommendation.
Sorry,
Second that, Chairman.
Let me get the sequence right. Councillor Linden was first.
Where is he?
You're muted, Councillor Linden. We can't
I
hear.
would like to propose officers' recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cottam, are you going to second that?
I'd be delighted to second it.
Well, thank you very
It makes
much.
my Christmas.
I'm going to go straight to the vote on that. Sharon?
Yeah, sorry. So this is for approval. Councillor Cottam.
Or.
Councillor Linden.
Or.
Councillor Longton.
Or.
Councillor McKinnon.
Or.
Councillor Macro.
Or.
Councillor Mays.
For.
Councillor Pask.
Or.
Councillor Stewart.
Or.
Councillor Law.
For.
So that's unanimous again.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on that's the last of the application. The only other item is usually one of review of appeals. I don't seem to have any on my paper copy. Are there any, Bob?
Chairman, unfortunately not this time, just because of the timing with the decisions coming in, but hopefully next time.
That's fine. So that's it. The meeting's the meeting's at an end, and I don't think we have another one before Christmas, do we?
No.
So I wish all of you members, thank you for your support throughout the year, and I wish you all a happy Christmas and also a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.